Hello everyone and welcome to my podcast Hellman Talks. Today I'm joined by Virginie Delpal. She's a true champagne expert from France who played a very big role helping the very prestigious champagne house Baron de Rothschild launch in the US. And she's a world traveler. She's lived in cities like Taiwan, Singapore, Paris, Australia, and much more. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about her story and learning more about the champagne world. So with that, Virginie, welcome to my podcast. Thanks for being here.
Of course, my pleasure. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here today.
Great. Well, Virginie, why don't you tell us where you're from and where you grew up?
Sure. So obviously you can tell with my accent, I'm French. I'm from the West Coast, actually, Loire-Vallée, very famous for the wine region, I would say. I born in Paris, but grew up over there. My parents are French. I've been lucky because since I'm kids, my family of my mom's been living in the UK, London. So I've been always exposed to kind of international life, always been in London for the holidays.
And because you had mentioned wine, and so because now you're working with champagne, so when did you exactly discover wine? Was that something you discovered when you were little or later on?
I would say obviously discover when I was teenager, obviously, since I grew up in a wine area, but I definitely went into the business way later. I was lucky because when I moved to Australia, I got to start in kind of this business, wine business. And it's really after finishing my master degrees. After Australia, I started to get some opportunity with my network to move to Taiwan. And this is where I started my first job as a business development manager for Taiwan and then Singapore. And I was taking care of wine, not champagne at that stage, but it was very interesting and it's how everything started really.
How different was it to be in Australia, Taiwan, Singapore, being brought up in Europe? Because I can imagine it's a big change.
It's been very different for sure. Australia has been amazing. I'm not going to lie. It's been an experience. Taiwan, Singapore is definitely, another challenge, a very different culture. Obviously living as a French person, European, living in Taiwan is a different culture. Living with Asian people, Chinese, Taiwanese, I would say, is very different. We don't have the same culture. We don't have the same reference. So it was a good challenge and I'm very, very happy I did it. I was quite happy as well to go back to my country, I will say. But I think, if you want to success in your career, you have to push your limit. And I think it was quite interesting for me to try a market as Asia. Because when you start working in Asia, I feel like it does help you after to develop other market as Europe and US.
How did that help you?
I believe not everyone first wants to go to Asia to work, mostly I guess as a woman. So I guess when you have on your resume Taiwanese experience, Taiwan experience, Singapore experience, you come back to France. Obviously your resume is very international. So because after the one I moved to the champagne business for a small grower, part of a big family. So it was called Frerejean, same family of Taittinger, but different branding. And obviously when they see my resume working in Asia, they asked me, okay, you're very good for international. Let's move you to New York. Would have been able to do New York straight away from France? I'm not sure. I think you need to prove yourself in other markets.
I think that's great that because it's true that not everybody wants to go to Asia. No. And it's good to push your limits because you get so many different opportunities. And maybe, as you said, thanks to you going to Australia, that's how you maybe expanded your network. And thanks to those opportunities, you have what you're started to do later on, which is in New York. And I feel like the champagne wine industry is very niche. Did you have a mentor or a person that helped you throughout your career that maybe gave you any valuable lessons?
So I guess I didn't have a mentor, meaning someone I've been, following years after years. I think I got lucky to have some opportunity by people I met during my expat life, meaning when I was in Australia, Sydney, I was able to meet the directors, Southern East Asia, of a big company called In Vivo. And because of this contact, he opened me the door to be working with a company in Taiwan and Singapore. So it's two big opportunities that was open to me because of this person. And yes, of course, it's been a very good example for me to start my career. But then obviously when I moved back to Europe, I had other jobs. So it changed a little bit. So I would say, yeah, this person probably to start the business was definitely very, very helpful for me. Yeah, I only see that one on my head right now.
Well, I mean, it's great because sometimes you don't have like a single person that helps you throughout your entire career.
No.
Sometimes you have a person that maybe helped you while you were in Australia, a person that maybe helped you while you were in Taiwan. But what it's good is sometimes to try to keep in touch with these people and see how, because sometimes the paths continue to cross.
No, and I think as well, when I was in Australia, I was young, I was 22, and obviously I was meeting a lot of people who was doing my job that I'm doing now back in time. And I saw them doing my job and I was like, oh, that's a job I could do actually. That's a job I would love to do.
What were they doing?
So they were pretty much like, they were doing what I'm doing now. So brand manager, brand ambassador for a brand, for a champagne brand, or for like wine. Obviously, I've always been more interested by champagne, just because it's a little bit more luxury product and it's something that bring you as well. Obviously, you have to be passionate about wine, but not only is as well bringing a lot of events around that. With the champagne, we do a lot of events as sport events, as SailGP, as polo games, tennis. So we're really involved into like the sport business, which I really love that. So I think champagne is quite interesting for that, more than wine, if you want to do like.
It's a bit broader, maybe.
It's bigger. It's not only wine. It's actually opening much more door into like partnership with something completely different, sports. So I really enjoy that.
That's good. I mean, I actually love sports myself. So and it's a good combination.
It is.
And then you also meet very interesting people from many different industries.
You grow your network. You meet new people that you couldn't have met doing just the job you do. So that's what's nice.
It sounds like a very interesting and very dynamic role that you're doing. And for those, because you obviously know a lot about champagne, but maybe for those who are not so familiar with the details, what are the key differences between champagne and sparkling wine?
So it's a good question too. A lot of people don't know actually. No, there is some people knows, but I'm based in the US. So as you know, a lot of people don't know sparkling wine, Prosecco, what's the difference. But champagne, the rule number one is obviously champagne has to be from Champagne, because Champagne, first of all, is a region. It's not only the drinks. First of all, is a region, and we call it Champagne because it's from Champagne. So any drinks, bubbles not from Champagne can't be called Champagne.
Even though they have the same grapes?
Even though they could use the same grape, but at the end, they're not from the same region. So it's never going to be exactly the same. And Champagne, actually, it's a region. It's like calling like a Burgundy wine from Burgundy, you call it from another name. Yeah. No, it has to be from Champagne because it's a denomination of the region.
Well, that's a very good explanation, so thank you. Very interesting. Is there something about the grapes that you think is worth knowing?
Yeah, of course. So obviously, I'm saying rule number one, it has to be from Champagne, but then there's much more than that. There's the grape that you have to use. We use 3 grapes in Champagne. So we use 2 red grapes, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and then the Chardonnay for the white grapes. That's mostly what we use in Champagne. After there's different rules, to be called champagne, you have to age your non-vintage for a minimum of 15 months, your vintage for a minimum of 3 years, if you want to be classified as champagne. And there's obviously other rules. Champagne region is limited, so you have to be part of this, area to be able to be, used as a champagne grape. Obviously, like the sparkling one from somewhere else will be called sparkling wine. Usually, if it's from Spain, we use the term cava. In Italy, we're going to use Prosecco, French Accorta. So depending where it's coming from. Yeah. I'm not saying you can't have a good sparkling wine in, US, France. It's just different.
Well, thank you so much for that explanation. It's always interesting to learn more about the grapes and like where wine comes from. And I like the comparison that you mentioned about cava in Spain. Like as I'm from Spain, so I know a lot about I hear cava a lot. And then as you mentioned in Italy, I can really tell that you're like very passionate about this industry, which is very nice to see. And before we're talking about what you're doing now, which I'm excited to hear more about, you mentioned that you've lived in so many different cities thanks to work. Was this always part of your plan, or how did this come about?
I think it came very naturally because I've been staying in, first of all, obviously I've been lucky. My parents been always bring me on holidays, travel when I was a kid. So I guess it pushed you to travel. So I already enjoyed that. But I really moved from my country, as I was saying, when I was 22 to Australia. I was thinking to stay 6 months, fall in love of the country, stay 2 years. And then obviously after that, I had to follow at some point my work opportunity. And I went back to Paris to finish my master's degree, as I say. And I was really open to like take any opportunity as it comes because, when you're young, when you start working in the market, You can't just, okay, I want to stay in Paris or I want to go to New York for work. No, you have to take what is available. And I had a very good opportunity, as I say, Taiwan and Taipei, and Singapore. After that, I moved back to Paris, moved back to London. And then I got an option as well to move to New York. So I moved to New York. And I was lucky as well recently to move to Miami. So it was part of the choice, but always kind of following my work.
I mean, you seem to be a very yes girl, following your kind of ambitions with work. If there's some people that maybe they would like to have that attitude, but maybe are struggling a bit because they don't want to take the risks, is there something that helped you to take that risk?
I think it's quite easy to live when you're younger. So as I was saying, for me, I decide, and not everyone does that, but I decide to do my bachelor degree, 3 years. Usually a lot of people's doing 3 years, and then in France at least does the 2 years master or 1 year master. For me, I cut that because I was quite confused what I really wanted to do. So I did my 3 years bachelor and I'm like, okay, let's go decide what I really want to do. Then it took me 2 years. I found my vocation, what I wanted to do, but I went back to my study. A lot of people sometimes start working and never finish it. For me, study was very important. So I think you just have to decide at which time you want to live. I thought it was quite interesting for me to live between my bachelor and my master degrees to give me a gap year. And I think it helps after to just follow my work.
I mean, I think it's very helpful, as you say, that some people take a little bit of a gap after finishing university before doing a master's, because then you know, okay, what is it that I'm interested in, instead of just jumping into whatever looks easiest or whatever it is. So out of all the different places that you've been, which one has like a special place in your heart?
Sydney.
Sydney?
I guess because it was the first one.
Okay.
I suppose it was the first one and obviously quite a unique place to live. I used to live in Bondi Beach, so obviously it was very unique and the first experience. And as well, I was younger, so maybe, you're not too focused at work at this stage. You're just trying to discover life and try what will make you happy. So yeah, it was the perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Obviously, I love Miami as well now.
Yeah.
I'm very happy there.
I haven't been to Australia. I really want to go, especially because they have the Australian Open. So, but in Miami I've been, and Miami, I think it's great. And now I see a lot of people are moving even more, leaving like the big cities, moving to like more beach and sunny places.
Exactly. You have the city and the beach. So
yeah.
Do
you have a preference of what you prefer more, like city, beach, or a combination?
I think it's quite nice to have, if you can have the option. I think New York is amazing. New York, if you have a shot in New York, you should always do it. You just spent almost 4 years in New York, so you do it. It's very it's very exhausting at some point. So I did what I had to do, and I realized, okay, now I'm looking much more for quality of life. So I thought Miami could be the right fit.
Yeah,
kind of like a big city still, but on the beach. And I'm still obviously doing New York a lot every month. So it's not, it's quite a good balance for me.
You get best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because you've been obviously traveling a lot, and it's been through work mostly that you've done all these travel. Like you've worked in other wine and champagne brands.
Yes.
How do you think those previous jobs helped you prepare for what you're doing now?
I guess for sure, like the wine helped me to start working on the international market because to be fair, I didn't really work too much in France. I've always been international. I always work overseas. So I feel like working in Taiwan, Singapore helped me prepare to work on an international market. Obviously working in English is not the same as working in my first language. Working with French people are very different than working with Asian as working with American. So the wine helped me for that.
Because I thought that was actually very interesting, and because I think it's interesting how every culture has its own kind of way of working. Can you give us like a little glimpse of how each culture is different?
I think it's very different because when I was working in obviously Taiwan, Singapore, I will talk much more on like in general of closing deal. It's not the same. Like working with, I will say Taiwanese, it's much more like yes, we're going to do it, but not every time happening. I feel like working for the American company, US, US people are much more, they don't have time. So if they want to see you, they will see you. And usually they see you is to make a deal with you. Mostly in New York, time is precious, time is money. And I feel like you cannot feel it much more than working in Taiwan. So it's a big difference.
Yeah.
And to come back on your question, I start with a smaller champagne house, Frerejean, which is part of Tétinger family. And they moved me to New York first. So because of them, I was able to learn about New York market. And when you move to a new market, it takes you at least 6 months to a year to get used to it. So it was a very good school, obviously.
It's good sometimes maybe working for a little bit smaller firms to learn a little bit more of the base, so that then when you end up going to a bigger one, then you know a little bit more of the basics, and then you can kind of excel from that.
But I feel like, yes, in terms of when you work for a smaller, you kind of have to do everything.
Yeah.
Marketing, sales, even like you touch a little bit everything. When you work for a big group, you're much more like on your line. You have to follow like a little bit more as a protocol. I would say I'm very lucky with Rothschild because it's still a family business. So we're not that big, still have a very big name obviously behind, but it's a family. So it's not like a LVMH group, which is much more bigger.
Yeah. So you mentioned Rothschild. So now you're working for the Rothschild family, and they opened a champagne house not too long ago, which is called Baron de Rothschild.
Yeah.
And the Rothschild family, they're very well known in many different sectors, but it would be interesting to hear, why did they start a champagne house and how difficult is it in practice?
So everything started in 2003 when they start thinking about a project in Champagne. They have a lot of wine, a lot of wineries. As you tell before, they had banks, they have hotels everywhere. They never had champagne. And obviously, it was quite important for them to, be able to introduce a champagne for all, events that they're doing worldwide. So in 2003, they start thinking, why are we not doing something? But obviously, it's such a competitive market. And the Rothschild family never been together in one project. So it's quite the first time that we have the three branch of the family came together. So everything starts back in time, 20 years ago. How it works is they went to see many partners, wine grower in Champagne, introduce them their project, show them what they wanted to do. Because what is very difficult in Champagne is to find the grapes. It's not much availabilities at the end. So when you have a new actors coming to Champagne, it's not going to be easy to find grapes because at the end, it's so many competitors in the market looking for grapes to make juice. Mm-hmm. So to find the top, in Champagne, you have different grapes. The top grape is Grand Cru, then Premier Cru, then non-classified. What the Rothschild wanted is only Grand Cru and Premier Cru, the top of the top. And obviously, the wine grower said, yes, we are in. So they started the project in 2005. And now we're celebrating the 20 years anniversary.
Yes. Yeah, and I think you mentioned that you're actually going to Champagne to celebrate the anniversary.
Yes, so we're going. So this week is actually the 20 years anniversary. We've been working on two sites. So we've been for 15 years working in partnership as with a cooperative in Champagne, sharing our facilities to make the champagne. And now we are completely independent. So we have one site in Auger is in Champagne, and one site in Vertu. And these two sites, one is the site in Auger for the bottling, to do all the process for the champagne. And Vertu is more like an old house that we've been renovated for 3 years. Beautiful big house that have one clos in hectare. So you're facing the vineyard, which is very beautiful. And we are opening the door this week. Okay. So all the Rothschild family will be there, and we have all our distributors worldwide who are joining us for that. So It's very exciting.
Well, first of all, happy anniversary.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be so exciting to work in such a new project, but with such an established and prestigious name that you have behind. And it's very exciting that, as you mentioned, that the three different heritage came together.
Yes.
And because, as you mentioned, the champagne house that you work for is a bit newer compared to other ones. Like Moet and other ones. Yes. How do you try to differentiate yourselves in such a competitive and saturated market?
So what the Rothschild wanted to do, something quite unique, is really to have champagne, like very upscale champagne. So when they start the adventure, they had to kind of make their own signature. So for them, how we call a house is we are a Chardonnay house. So we're really focusing on one grapes, which is Chardonnay. Because usually I would say the top grape, the nice grape, Grand Cru, Premier Cru, is in Chardonnay. But it's not much of them, so you need to find them. So it's not many houses specialized into Chardonnay. Most houses going to specialize much more in Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier.
So it's a bit more exclusive.
Exactly. We wanted to specialize on something that's not been done too many times. As well as I was saying, we're only using top grapes. What is mean top grape? It means better quality. So we're only using Grand Cru, high growth, and Premier Cru, first growth, at 90%. So when you have great quality, it does help as well at the end for the result.
Yeah.
And we age a lot of champagne. So as I was saying, the minimum aging in champagne for a non-vintage is 15 months. For us, we age almost like 4 years. And for the vintage, we age for 8 years.
Okay.
So you make a big difference.
Yeah.
So we're trying to really focus on the upscale, high-end champagne.
Yeah, it's good in a way that you decided to target a bit of a niche area within champagne, because, as you mentioned, maybe there's not, even though champagne is very competitive, but maybe within that niche, there's not so much competition, and having good quality will make customers very happy, which will be great.
It is, honestly, like, obviously there's competitors. I'm not gonna, there's beautiful houses as well. We have beautiful champagne, that's for sure. I think what it helps, obviously, a little bit is we part of the Rothschild circle. So obviously when they start the house 20 years ago, we started in 2005, but we only start to commercialize the champagne in 2010. And at the beginning, we only had 1 or 2 champagne on the range. Now we are almost 7 to 8 champagne on the range. So much more bigger. Yeah. At the beginning, we're only in a few countries. Now we're almost in 100 countries.
Okay, wow.
So it's obviously a big improvement.
Congrats for being already, even though it's so new, that you're still in so many countries. And something that I'm curious, because I feel like champagne houses, they're usually known for very big marketing campaigns, flashy events. But I feel like Rothschild, they're a bit more discreet. Is that part of the strategy?
So I think that's true, you're right. But I guess the one who was doing a lot of marketing is the one the one who's not using marketing. They're still here, but they don't use the budget for the marketing. So you won't know it if you're not like in the wine business, but there's plenty of them like not doing marketing. For us, we're doing marketing, but obviously we don't do the same volume, obviously at the big players. So we don't have the same, obviously, budget marketing. So I would say we do a couple events, as I was mentioning before, like SailGP, which is a selling event worldwide. It's kind of the F1 of the water. Okay. It's like a big race happening in almost 10, 15 countries worldwide. And we have the champagne partner for it. So obviously for that, it's kind of a very great visibility for us. So we do, but we are much more discreet, obviously. So that's how we work and how we want to.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good strategy because you don't always have to have that big marketing strategy. You can have another strategy who also targets maybe a little bit different types of audience. And it's good that you've managed to build already so strong partnerships with names that are very well known. So I'm sure that there will be a lot of more to come and more markets that you will cover.
Definitely. I will say something as well. We definitely don't have the same volume as big players. Okay. We are a medium house, so we couldn't cover that much volume as LVMH and Piper, or other big names that you could know.
Okay. Well, what I do know, and I have to say, is that you have here a beautiful bottle with us. Can you tell us a little bit what this bottle is? Because I have to say, I mean, in the cameras, hopefully we can show it later, but it's beautiful. And the logo is very nice. So what's the story behind this bottle?
So that one is actually my favorite. It's a Blanc de Blanc. It's kind of the signature of the house. Why? Because I told you we are specialized in Chardonnay. And Blanc de Blanc, what the meaning of Blanc de Blanc is mean Chardonnay grapes. Only Chardonnay grapes. We don't use red grapes, but only white grapes. That one is 100% of Chardonnay, Premier Grand Cru. So that one is quite unique because on the nose is quite tropical note. It's a bit of toastiness flavor, brioche as well. Because when we age the Chardonnay, it brings this type of flavor. We age this bottle for almost 5 to 6 years. We always say we don't use any makeup, meaning we don't use sugar. We don't add sugar. So we only extra brut. So we add a little bit of sugar. That one is 5 to 6 grams per liters. And it's very important because when you don't add too much sugar, you really feel the wine. And it's very important.
And then maybe to your point about what you mentioned about having very good quality grapes, then you can probably feel it very well.
Exactly. Actually, you don't need to cover anything when you have the right grapes, when you take your time. And with Rothschild, Champagne, Barons de Rothschild, it's very important for us to take our time. And as I was saying, for non-vintage, we age for a minimum 4 years. That one is 6 years. So it does help.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit similar, like what you mentioned, like when you have good quality products of, I don't know, to do a salad or
anything. Yes.
You don't have to kind of put a little bit of sugar or
just natural is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So that's good. So it's been very interesting hearing about your company now, but it would be very good to hear and understand a little bit more about your role and what you're doing. So what are you doing now in Barons de Rothschild, and how does your day-to-day look like?
Yes, I'm the US brand manager for Champagne Barons de Rothschild. I used to be based in New York. As I was saying, I moved to Miami. I cover mostly the East Coast, New York, Miami, because it's a too big market for Champagne. Of course, I'm always covering as well other states, or at least big cities as LA, San Francisco, Chicago, for any type of event. My role is pretty large, I would say, because I take care of the sales, marketing events, obviously always be on the logistic as well. I moved to the US to help them push the product, but mostly to have a better visibility in the market, because obviously we're kind of a new brand, as I was telling you. Even if we have the name beyond, it's quite important to have someone from the house in the market to push, to motivate the sales people, and to, explain them what is Champagne Barons de Rothschild, comparing of, but the distributor doesn't only carry one champagne, he always carry maybe 5, 10 different champagne brands. So it's important to be there and explain them what is Champagne Barons de Rothschild compared to the other for them to be able to sell it. So I'm doing my New York, Miami every month. That's my regular basis. I have usually maybe few events a month, like 2-3 events every month. And I'm working mostly with hotel, Michelin, restaurants, and obviously French restaurant a lot, Palace, with the help of all my salespeople. So that's pretty much my day-to-day job. And marketing-wise, obviously, I'm helping. We have a marketing team, obviously, in France. So I'm kind of the relay, like the person who's going to send all the information of what's happening in the US, to do some posts, to do some marketing in France and talking about the US. Yeah. So kind of the middle person.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very important to have a person in the ground when you're trying to launch in a new market, to make a name for yourself, to build a relationship with possible clients, and to join events and also see what the competitors are doing locally. So that's very good. And I mean, you were tasked with not an easy task, because you were tasked to launch in a new market. And I can imagine that in general, that's very tough. But specifically in the US, being such a saturated market, what are kind of the challenges when you're starting this from like the bottom up, which is what you did?
I would say it's always challenging when you start at the beginning, because you want to be what you have to do is create a network. As I was saying, I was lucky because I started with another champagne brand. So I started to create my network already a few years back. But when you start in a new market, you have to create a network. Once you have the network, you have to make the relationship happening, because at the end of the day, how it works, people's gonna get your champagne because of the quality, of course, but as well, the person who is selling beyond is very important. So I have a very close relationship with most of my clients, but as well, a very strong relationship with my importer distributors. And you have to understand that US is a different market than French, so you don't work exactly the same. So I would say the challenge was mostly to know how it works, to know as well that in the US, we don't sell direct. We have an importers who is importing the champagne. Then we have a distribution in every state. And then from the distribution, we're selling to the restaurant. So it's quite different of, how it works in France.
Yeah. And so you mentioned building strong relationships, creating a network. You've obviously been very successful at that, because you managed to build very strong and genuine relationships with clients and prospects and people. Do you have any advice for how people can build strong and genuine relationships with clients and people?
So yes, obviously building relationship is a key, mostly in New York, because a lot of competition, as I was saying, you need to be persistent. You need to make the difference. You need to be creative. That's something you're going to be able to achieve a lot of sales if you're able to do all these things. When I say creative, I'm thinking about making an experience, like a special dinner, like we're going to create an event before the end of the year, which is going to be in a jazz place at the Hellman Hotel, for example.
Beautiful.
And the idea is, because obviously wine dinner, what you're thinking to be sitting, taste a lot of wine. This time we want to be more like on a different type of scale format. So we want to invite the people, they're going to exchange, and then we're going to sit, listen to the jazz, have great champagne, trying to create like memorable experience. And I think it's what New York needs.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. First of all, I love jazz. So I think that's great. But I think it's very important to build a memorable experience and also experiences that are a bit different, because sometimes maybe with these houses or, I don't know, competitors that have been longer in the market, maybe they're used to doing their typical events. And if you try to do something a bit different, then people are looking forward to it because maybe it's a bit different. And then they're a bit curious to be like, oh, what is this? Oh, jazz. Interesting. Let's go. So I think that's great. And you've mentioned sales. You have a lot of experience within sales. And I'm curious to understand, what does it take to be a successful salesperson within the champagne industry?
All right. So I guess, I would say obviously being persistent is something very important. Being a good sale as well, we say, as I was saying before, the relationship that you're creating is part of the sales, the network, obviously. But as well, being an expert of what you do is quite important, because many, in the champagne, mostly a wine, you're going to talk with players, like big players, like knows about wine a lot, and you want them to take you seriously. So you need to know what you're talking about. And obviously the other thing is love what you do, like enjoy trusting the product that you're working for. I think it's very important. Like working for the Rothschild champagne, for me, it's amazing because I really like the product itself. So it just helps on a day-to-day basis to sell something you believe on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very true, that it helps when you believe in the product and you like it and you enjoy it, because I think that people see it in your eyes and a little bit in your body language. So it's very good. And as you mentioned, like persistence, but persistence is something that you can have everywhere, but it's so good and important to be persistent in things.
I would say, yeah, persistent for at least at the beginning, when you start a new market, prospection is very important. Right now, when you know your market, obviously you don't do prospection anymore, but at the beginning it's something you have to do non-stop. And you have to literally go door to doors. And once you know your market, it's okay. You have the network. It's just easier to navigate.
Yeah. And you just have to continue with that relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's been very interesting hearing a little bit what Baron de Rothschild is doing. Are there any exciting projects that you and Baron de Rothschild are working on? Any new markets that we should know about?
I would say obviously the opening this week of the new site, which is going to be a beautiful house where we're going to be able to receive our guests or partners. It's pretty much you're going to be able to come to Vertu. And be able to have some champagne glass, obviously, and visit our cellar, because we're going to have a beautiful cellar. You're going to come with us as well, visiting the vineyard. So it's going to be a full champagne experience. So that's one of our new projects that we're offering.
Well, I mean, I wish you the best for this exciting project, and it will be very interesting for people to go and see the cellar, because it's very nice to go and see kind of the origins and when things are being made. So I'm sure there will be a lot of success in that. And it's been very interesting to hear about your career, your story, and learning more about the champagne business. Before we wrap up, we have what we call the rapid questions, which I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions, and you answer the first thing that comes to mind.
All right.
Ready? Okay. So the first question is, what's something that made you smile this week?
London.
Beautiful. That's a good one. And it's been sunny?
Yeah, I'm in London. That's the reason.
Nice. What's a word that describes you?
As happy.
Nice. Beautiful word. Yes. What's a new skill that you want to learn?
Kite surf.
Oh, very nice. And good for the summer. What's a new language that you would like to speak fluently?
Spanish.
Okay.
It's not very good right now. Try.
Nice. And the last question, what's the best advice someone has given you?
Yes. You only live once. And that's definitely me, because I'm always part of the adventure. And I'm always, as you were saying at the beginning, a yes person. And is how I'm here today.
Yeah.
In New York, Miami. You only live once.
Yeah. And it's also why you're here, because you said yes. So thank you so much.
Exactly.
It's been super interesting hearing about your story and learning what you're doing with the champagne business with the Rothschild family. And thank you so much for bringing this. Is there anything else that you want to cover that we haven't done yet?
Yes, I feel like let's cheers.
Yeah, amazing. Great. Well, cheers.
Santé.
Santé. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.